Hello, welcome. I see we have 10 people joining. We cannot see the audience in this setup, but we will be able to interact in different ways during the webinar. So welcome everybody. We are going to start shortly. Just waiting for another minute, hopefully, to get our last panelist online and maybe some few latecomers. So I can see some familiar names in the audience from city of Gävle, Finland. Louis Mulleman is with us as well. Colleagues from Tallinn and some names that I don't recognize. Okay, so yes, we are recording the event, and if you signed up for our newsletter, you will be able to get the recording. Thank you, Joe, for the question. So welcome everyone to this side event, Closing the SDG Action Gap, Moving from Monitoring Hype to Multi-Level Action. We are very happy to organize this webinar, the City of Tallinn, Estonia, together with the European Commission Joint Research Center and the UN Environment Programme. And this event is actually part of an initiative that we launched in the City of Tallinn as European Green Capital last year, when we created a Sustainability Governance Hub, where we gather experts, institutions, and practitioners around the question on how to improve delivery of actions for sustainable development, with a lot of focus on the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Very happy to be here today. Now I see that the last panelist also hopefully will be able to connect with 4 speakers. So we have, going by the order of the program, we have Dr. Iraklis Stamos from the European Commission Joint Research Center, where you lead a team in the Territorial Development Unit working on localizing the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Hello, Iraklis.
Hi, Stina. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for having me. And we're really looking forward to sharing our work with the community.
Really good to have you. Thank you. Then we have Ms. Gulnara Roll, who is Head of Cities Unit at the Energy and Climate Branch of the Economy Division at the United Nations Environment Programme. Welcome, Gulnara.
Thank you very much, Stina.
Great to have you here. Then we have Krista Campus, Head of the EU and International Relations at the City of Tallinn, Estonia, and former Executive Director for the Green Capital that ended by the end of last year. Hello, Krista.
Hello, good afternoon.
And finally, I hope now that we also have Mr. Vakhtang Lomjaria here, Head of Municipal Department of Economic Development from the City Hall of Tbilisi, Georgia. Can you hear us? Might still be loading. We will try to sort this out in the background. Oh, here we are. Here. Hello.
Hello.
Great. Can you hear us?
Yes. Excuse me for it was a technical problem.
Joining us directly from Geneva, right?
Yeah.
The UNECE Regional Forum.
Hello, everyone.
Hello. Okay. So now we are going to, in our program today, we have these 4 speakers that I have just introduced. We are going to start with a bit of a longer presentation from Iraklis on some of the ongoing research that you are doing at the Joint Research Center on a stock-taking analysis of actions that cities are currently undertaking and reporting on in their format of voluntary local reviews. So you will tell us more about that and what kind of insights this can bring to inform actions at different levels. We're going to have some time for Q&A after the presentation, and then we will move into the perspectives from the UN Environment Programme and the 2 city representatives that we have here. So just for the sake of housekeeping in this webinar, there are different ways that you can ask a question. We have the Q&A function that you can see in the bottom banner menu. Here you can submit your question. And there's also the chat where you can put other observation, reflections, or greetings to the audience. So these are the 2 different functions that you can keep track of. But you will also have the opportunity to raise your hand, and I will be able to unmute you, and you can then put your question and introduce yourself live to the panelists. So we leave it to you to choose, and I will let you know when we start with the question and answer session. So yes, I have my colleague in the background also supporting me to look at the questions that you submit, so we should be on track. So without further ado, I hand the screen to you, Iraklis. Please share your research and what you are cooking at the moment at the Joint Research Center, and how you think that this can be helpful for stakeholders at all levels working on trying to close the SDG action gap.
Great. Just to confirm, do you see my screen?
Yes.
And then you see it in full screen, in full mode, right? Full screen mode. Great. Okay. So first, a big thanks for having us today with you. I mean, I cannot stress enough how much we share the same ideas and the same objectives into bringing these SDGs into fruition, particularly when it regards the local level. Well, we are the Joint Research Center of the European Commission. That means that we are predominantly working on European territories, and we are really working hard in order to understand in what ways, on the one hand, we can sort of monitor the SDGs, but at the same time, and while we are approaching to 2030, if and how we can actually achieve these SDGs. And with this in mind, we started building an initiative that I will try to show you today. But before that, just to say a small disclaimer that this is a work in progress for us, because first of all, the SDGs are so huge and enormous by conception, that they cover so many different layers and entities and aspects of life and society that obviously it's not just a small task to understand how they can be tackled and addressed. So this is something that we are continuously building on. And then you said about insights, Tina, which is basically, this is our main goal here. The motivation behind this work that we are doing is in order to be able to answer these very simple questions, right? Like how to achieve the SDGs. It's not a very simple question to answer, so we try to decompose it and break it down into different smaller parts that we can address. So let me guide you through a little bit our work. So just maybe as a small thing to keep in mind, usually when we talk to people, we have a part of our presentation where we introduce the SDGs, although it's the 2024, right? But still, we have found out that within some communities and within some areas and sectors, it's still important to raise the awareness about the SDGs themselves, even before talking about their achievement. But in our case, I will just jump straight into it. So at the moment, we're looking into a sort of a situation where after 2015, mostly nations, countries started reporting through their voluntary national reports based on their progress and performance on the SDGs. Around the same time started a similar trend, hype, let's say, on local and regional governments around the world to report on the SDGs as well. And we have now, we're doing a parallel exercise to that of the UN, where we are trying to gather this information and depict this information so that for our own, let's say, exploratory research interests. That is, we're trying to map and visualize the type of authorities, the type of governments that are issuing these VLRs, in order to have an understanding of how the situation is looking. So at the moment, we are looking, as of today, I would say, at 311 voluntary local reviews published worldwide by 225 unique local and regional governments. We see the cities and municipalities having a dominant role in that one. More than 2 out of 3 VLRs are published by such entities as compared to instance for counties, districts, provinces, regions, and so on. And we also see a rather big concentration in Europe. So Europe is leading the way in the production or in the reporting of the SDGs at the local level. Coverage-wise, we are seeing a situation where I would say like 25% of the countries are in the world are covered by these voluntary local reviews. So they are issued by local and regional governments in around 76 countries of the world. And you see here on the map that I have in this slide, the different entities that are producing these reports, and you can see the concentration, you can see the gaps as well, which is very, very interesting and important for us in order to be able to focus or raise the awareness in particular areas and regions of the world. Now, these VLRs, when we just look at the sort of metadata of these VLRs, we can see, as I said, the type of authorities that are issuing them. We can see how if there is indeed a hype, if we are having peaks on this hype, if this is a hype that is continuing or not. If we have gaps in reporting year. So it's very important for us to have this sort of overview on the frequency of reporting at the local level on the SDGs. But we also, as I said before, we can study the different areas of the world that are issuing this VLR. So we see, as I said before, Europe taking the lead here, but also South America and Asia coming second and third. And obviously, we can also territorially allocate these voluntary local reviews into countries, so by issuing country. And you see on the right here again the first, second, third, and so on countries that are issuing such reports. Again, these are not the voluntary national reports of the UN. These are the voluntary local reviews. That is, again, local and regional governments. Now, there is also an issue on the very main idea of the Sustainable Development Goals being, for us to share the same language and being able to talk to each other on the same way. But when it comes to how these reviews are being reported, we also see a very diverse situation. Obviously, English being chosen in most of the cases, but then we see governments, local and regional governments taking different approaches, choosing their own language, which might limit them in terms of audience, but at the same time, it assures that it is taken up by the local communities within their countries, as opposed, for instance, to creating a report on English in a country that is not necessarily English speaking. And then we have also other kind of information where when we read these VLRs, we see if the information that is reported in there is of qualitative nature, of quantitative nature, or of both. That is, if data is included in there, or if other kind of information is included in there, like aspirations, the political willingness to follow the SDGs, and so on. Now, with this context in mind, I would say with this more or less situation on how the VLRs are looking at the moment, we are developing this activity at the European Commission, the Joint Research Center of the European Commission, on the localization of the SDGs. And why do we do that? Because we feel that there is still the knowledge about the localization of the SDGs is still very young, so there is a lot of things to explore for us. And having in mind that if we as society are to achieve the SDGs as a whole, we can only do it with a multi-level governance, so with the cooperation between different governmental levels. We feel that there is a lot of support to be provided to the actual SDG practitioners at the local level, that is, to the local and the regional governments on how to monitor and how to implement the SDGs, but at the same time, draw conclusions from what is happening on the ground for the policy and decision-making level, in our case, in Europe. But similarly, one would say that similar conclusions and lessons can be drawn for the UN level, for example. Now, the work that we do, as I said, focuses on 4 different dimensions of the SDGs, always at the local level. So we do a lot of work on the monitoring part. That is, we're trying to develop indicators, methods, tools, ways in order to understand how cities and regions in Europe are monitoring the SDGs, or how they should or could monitor them. Then we do data analysis around it. We see the performance of regions and cities in this regard. We also focus a big part of our work on the leave no one behind principle. So we are trying to see how vulnerable groups and people can be monitored, studied, or addressed within the SDG framework. And then we also work a lot on the interlinkages between the SDGs. That is, what are the complementarities, the trade-offs. We're doing, again, evidence-based and data-driven approaches on trying to prove on whether there is a goal or a target of a goal of an SDG can be achieved at the same time with another one. However, today I'm going to be focusing on the implementation part, exactly because the driving force of this activity is on bridging the monitoring hype and the implementation, the actual reality of delivering the SDGs on the ground. So to this end, we came to understand that the voluntary local reviews have also, I mean, you can read them in many different ways. And one of these ways is obviously the monitoring part, because you can see how cities and regions are using different kind of indicators in order to grasp their own realities, and how they are monitoring their own needs on the ground, which is very, very interesting to see and read. But at the same time, we realize that there is a wealth of information in these voluntary local reviews on how cities and regions in the world are trying to achieve them, because at the same time, when reporting on their trend on an indicator, or how they perform based on an indicator for a specific target or a goal, usually they also mention what actions, plans, strategies, initiatives they are taking in order to improve this indicator that they are monitoring. And with this in mind, we started bit by bit building and achieving the SDGs repository, where we, in very simple words, we built a database. We started with an initial data collection, focusing on the actions that are reported on VLRs. Then we do a little bit of a refinement of the database based on what we find, and then we continue with our collection of this information that we found in the VLRs. When we started, we focused basically on 3 goals. Based on these 3 goals, we refined our database, and now, as we are speaking now, this is an ongoing work for us on covering all VLRs and all SDGs. So that is all 311 VLRs for all 17 SDGs and their targets. And why we do that, as I said, because we're trying to understand what these actions are about. So actually how you can achieve the SDGs according to the practitioners, according to the governments that are trying to achieve this. Also, a very overarching question for us, research question for us, is what means of implementation the local and regional governments are using to achieve them, but not only at an horizontal generic level, but also at SDG level, or even at target level, because we go to the detail, to the level of detail of a target. And then when we're reporting, when we're registering these actions in our database, we fill in a series of information about the population that these actions target. And in that sense, we can understand if they are LNOB inclusive, that is, if they actually leave no one behind. We also register information about their outcome, be it observed or expected, about the budget, if reported, so how much money or resources this action needs, and so on. So based on this compilation of information, I will try to show you a couple of, let's say, insights that we have drawn so far. So at the moment, as I said, we have done sort of 1/5 of the work, so 20%. So please bear with us, because the things that I will show you refer to these 20% of findings. You see in the map the VLRs that we have so far analyzed in detail. You see the concentration in Europe exactly because we are the Joint Research Center of the European Commission. We do not intend to limit ourselves there, though, because we believe there are a lot of lessons to be learned from other areas of the world. But so far, it's very important to note that we have identified more than 1,000 unique actions to address the SDGs, as reported by 52 local and regional governments in 60 voluntary local reviews. You see the difference here because one regional governments might have reported once, twice, or 3 times through a VLR. And we tend to analyze this thing. And as I said, basically we open this PDF that we cannot do in an automatic way exactly because the VLRs are not structured in a way that you can just put it on an AI or extract it in a different way, but you really have to put your eyes on it, which is still very, very interesting, although resource intensive. And then every time we read the VLR and we find an action, we register in our database. We assign it on a category based on the content of this action, and I will show you some examples. We also assign it to a type in order to understand, for instance, if this is a strategy or a plan or a one-time initiative and so on. We have a short description, what this action is about. We know who is publishing, who is initiating this action. We obviously allocate it to a goal, to a target, ideally to a UN indicator if relevant. As I said, we register if there is any outcome, what is the target population, what is the duration, what is the budget, and so on. So I will just share a couple of insights based on this work. So at the moment, it seems like the SDGs are very well interconnected with everything that has to do with mobility and transportation. There might be a big bias here because, as I said, we started registering actions in our database predominantly focusing on SDG 11, which is an SDG that encompasses a lot of transport and mobility, sustainable mobility, and so on elements. And there might be a bias here. Still, however, it tells you already a little bit how the situation is looking. If you're looking at the different categories, we have something like 168 different categories of action. So there is different contents of action. You see, for instance, housing, employment, energy, equality, and so on. Obviously, we are refining these categories every time we feel it's necessary. You see, for instance, we have 3 different categories on energy efficiency, energy management. We might, put these categories together after the first, let's say, after we finalize the collection of actions. But this already gives you a sort of an idea on how the SDGs are approached. Then, as I said, we register each action based on its type. And that is also very interesting to understand because, as I said before, we know if this is a one-off initiative started by a local and regional government, if it's a plan, if it's a strategy, or even a policy, which means that the integration of the SDGs is a bit more profound in this case. And we can identify which are the cases because we are able to do what we call a little bit of combinatorial analysis, that is, bring together the different elements that I'm showing you here and relate them, for instance, to a target or to a goal. That is, we can tell you if when you're targeting target 8.1 or target 11.2 of the SDGs, then these are the kind of categories that cities are implementing. These are the types of actions that regions are implementing. So we can bring in even the different elements of the type of authorities that are issuing, that are actually implementing these actions. So we bring all these elements together. And one of the things that we do, which we find very, very important, is how are these actions being implemented? So the measure of implementation of a specific action. Now, this is a very strong message both to the subnational level, so to the actional SDG practitioners, but also to the policy and decision-making level. Why? Well, because as you can see on the left, again, based on the analysis that we have done so far, the SDGs are predominantly addressed through infrastructure and legislation. This is a very strong message, and then followed by education and awareness campaigns. This is a very strong message for us, again, being the Commission, to inform Directorate Generals on how or what sort of initiatives they can take at their level in order to support subnational governance to achieve the SDGs. So facilitate, for instance, through funding programs that favor infrastructure investments and development, or by providing guidelines, directives that can be uptaken at the regional and urban level, for instance, in Europe. That is via infrastructure and legislation. Obviously, there are many different types of measures of implementation. And then you can also, when you look at this tool that we have built, that I will show you a little bit later, you can also choose one, as I said before, one goal or one target, and see how these measures of implementation change. For instance, when we're talking about SDG-7 on energy, you will see much less legislation and much more infrastructure, but it would be the other way around for social goals, for example. And then there is also a very interesting category that we have developed, which is the targeted population by its action, again, as reported in the voluntary local review. Obviously, the big majority of these actions are meant to be for the general population, so for everybody. However, exactly because there's this very strong sort of mandate within the very concept of the SDGs to leave no one behind, you see that you can already draw some very interesting insights on other groups of the community and of the society that are being addressed by specific actions. And then you can see which actions these are based on which target or which goal you choose, or even which country, or even which type of authority. That is, you can say, okay, I would be very much interested in understanding how cities are addressing the youth population in this goal. And the tool that we have developed will return you the actions that are being done in this regard. This is just a small example of how we log in the information. This is just a snapshot of our, let's say, back-end database, where we have, the name, the target, the means of implementation, the type, the goal, the target, and so on. So all of this information that I just told you, we just fill in this tabular form, which we then use in order to develop our online tool. Just a very small example of what I was saying before. If you look at the two different goals, which are really quite different to one another, Goal 11 on sustainable cities and communities, and Goal 8 on economic growth and decent work, you see how the means of implementation of actions actually change. Well, obviously, on economic growth, infrastructure development is marginally interesting. You see it like before last as a category, as compared to, for instance, as I was saying before, Goal 11, that has a lot to do with public spaces, possibly in public transport lanes, bike lanes, and so on, in order to reduce the number of people that are heavily injured or severely injured in traffic accidents, as an example. And you see how how this differentiates between one goal and another, or even within a target and another one. Now, long story short, what do we understand so far? And obviously, as I said, this is an ongoing exercise for us that we aim to conclude in the next couple of months. There are many ends or many uses or many end users then of this tool that we have developed. First and foremost, we see this being very relevant for the actual people that are working on the implementation of the SDGs, on taking decisions and developing policies, strategies, measures, plans, whatever that is, in order to address the SDGs, because this can be a very interesting resource for learning from what peers are doing. There are also other insights used by another type of audience that is working on understanding the trends and the gaps in reporting and implementation based on the area of the world. or I would even say on the SDGs, because another thing that we can answer by this exercise is whether there are SDGs that are more frequently addressed, or if there are SDGs that are neglected, as is often the feeling in many communities regarding more social SDGs, particularly in what we say more developed parts of the world. But this tool can partially answer this question. Then there is this very important aspect of categorization, because we can know, as I said before, what types of actions cities are taking, or regions, or provinces, or counties, or whatever that is, and what means of implementation they are using, and if indeed all the targeted populations that should be addressed in a certain community are addressed. And finally, we believe that this is a tool that can provide insights to support policy and decision making, exactly because there is evidence behind it. Because out of this, when aggregating this information and bring it up a level, particularly for Europe, for us, there are very strong messages to pass on to the Commission services. What comes next is that we're going to enhance our combinatorial analysis versus what we now have, which is more sort of straightforward filtering insights. We are working on adding an extra layer on this repository, which doesn't really stay on providing to the end user the action and all of this information that I have just talked about, but also the importance of this action versus another one. So we don't want this repository to be, of static use, as we feel that it might become obsolete. But on the other, to the contrary, we're trying to bring in an element of putting a significance. How important is it to do option A versus option B, particularly in light of, for instance, limited resources, time, money, people, capacity, and so on. And then we intend to, first of all, make this diagnostic tool, which is now only for internal use. So although I have this link here, unfortunately, you cannot really access it, but we intend to make it public in the next couple of months. And on top of that, we aim to open it to the community. That is for entities, users, practitioners, anybody that is working in the SDG field and sector, to be able to report actions and strategies and plans and so on that are addressing the SDGs. So with this, I stop, and I thank you very much for your attention, and again for the invitation to be part of this very, very interesting event for us. Stine, if I can just have like 2 or 3 minutes tops to show you a little bit how this tool looks like at the moment.
Yes, and then we have some questions.
Excellent. Okay, I'll just really take 2 minutes, because again, as I said, this is work. Do you see my? Do you continue seeing my screen?
Yeah.
Or is it the presentation, or is it?
No, we can see the interface.
Okay, great. Okay, so this is the sort of the landing page of our tool. Where we have different, as always, different explanations of what we do, so that the user is able to acquaint herself or himself with it. We have a glossary of the different definitions that we have used and so on. We have now so far developed 2 of its functionalities, the first one being what we call the VLR library, where, as I said, we are logging in information on the number of VLRs and then all related metadata of this that have been published in the world. You can see all these graphs that I showed you, but then you can also see how these graphs change depending on the type of authority that the user might choose, or to see, for instance, where are the English VLRs in the world, and then obviously this changes and you see different kind of visualizations, or the type of VLR and so on. So this is just the VLR sort of library connect functionality. And we also have this repository, which we call actions inventory, where again you have all of these graphs, bar plots that I showed you on the categories, the measures, the types, and so on. What I didn't show you is that when you go in the end of this, you can actually see what are these actions about? Because you filter, you see, you choose a goal, you choose something, and then you see, for instance, that what is implemented in New York, depending on the goal that you chose, what is it exactly about, as reported in the VLR, what is its scope, what is its outcome, if it's observed or expected. And then, as I said, you can do all kinds of filtering exercises here by choosing a single target and trying to see how, first of all, where you find this information, because the map changes again. You see what kind of categories are included. So obviously, we are now randomly HO 7.1. We're on energy. We have 2 types of categories. We have different measures of implementation, much less than the bar plot that we saw before. We have much less types, the target population, and so on. So you can sort of play with this tool and get even more insights that we have thought of. Well, that would be it, I guess. So again, thanks.
Thank you, Rakis. I think this is, I'm sure that the audience here agree that it's a big job that you have undertaken. It's a great way to valorize what all cities are doing with those VLRs. I think, huge efforts going into each single report, and to have this global overview, I think it's really something unique. So I mean, we have quite a lot of questions, so we have to be mindful with a little bit with time management, but I will start with the question that came in first in the Q&A, and that is probably quite relevant when you look at this, like you call the SDG mosaic, no? Because we know that there is no standard format for the VLRs. There's no requirement. It's a voluntary report. So the first question that comes from Renzo and Andrea here in the audience is, how do you assess the reliability of these reports, actually? I mean, that's a big topic. And please share any reflections.
Absolutely. Well, the truth is that we don't per se, because this is we are trusting the fact that this is a document which is published by an issuing authority, and in 100% of the cases, the issuing authority is a local and regional government, and we already sort of take it for granted that when this information is reported, it's true, particularly in what regard the actions. When it comes to the monitoring part, that is on the data that a local and regional government is choosing to present for an indicator, we have our cross-validation functionalities where we try to use as much as possible, I would say, to the extent possible, official data. So we are sort of able to cross-check on a similar indicator that a city or a region is reporting, for example, on unemployment. We can check via Eurostat, usually when we're talking about Europe, whether this is the case or not. And then this goes for a lot of indicators. So on the monitoring part, we have our reliability validation check. On the actions part, we take the word for granted.
Yeah, I mean that is there's sort of no real mechanism to do that, but often also I think, and we will come to more the practitioner perspective in the panels, and I think it's really at the city level that this takes place as well. Usually it's a very elaborate process. It involves many stakeholders.
Exactly.
There's a consultative process. So there are checks along the way to make sure that it's not a report that just is produced out of thin air.
But it's on their end. This is what I'm trying to say. It's on the end of the entities that are responsible for and signing for this publication.
Yeah, exactly. So I think we have a few questions. We had one that is about whether the VLRs follow a similar structure. We know there is no shared structure. From your impression, just very quickly, have you seen that there are some similarities, or?
Well, if I had to like really cluster, I would say there is usually a first part which starts with the political willingness of the issuing authority, usually the mayor, or the president, stating on why this is important, and trying to integrate this particular report into the bigger efforts of either the region or the city into monitoring sustainable development as such. That would be more or less the first part. The second part is usually on the monitoring and indicators. So this is where we see per goal. Usually this is structured per goal. We see, not in all cases, but let's say all 17 goals and some of the targets within the goals, and then indicators for these targets. which is again with some trend lines and some comments and analysis on the data series. Again, depends on the issuing authority. And usually there is the third part, which is discussing more on so actions, policies, measures, again per SDG or per target, yeah, that the city or region is taking in order to address this.
Yeah, right. And I want to try to cluster two questions here that come from Gerald Berger and Luis Mulleman. It's a little bit around the competences and the responsibilities that cities and local subnational governments have, because of course, depending on the political administrative system in the country, there are different competences at the local level. So I'm sure that you agree with that. So that also influences what kind of content is reported in the VLR.
Absolutely.
And the second question, a little bit tied to that, is that Luis Mulleman found it interesting that cities often use legislation as action type, since it's often argued that they have too little legislative room.
Yeah, exactly.
But maybe this category is too broad, because next to legal acts, there are a lot of rules and similar legal actions, permits, etc., that cities can take. So what do you think about this category?
So on the first thing, which is indeed the case, we're trying to capture this diverse responsibility and authority room that, as you put it, Stina, by identifying the different type of authorities that are working on a particular action. And indeed, there are some lessons to be learned from there. And indeed, the environment is very diverse, even within Europe, where you would expect a little bit of a more homogeneity, let's say, but even within Europe, there are very, very different responsibilities, authorities given to regional and local governments. When it comes to, which is a very interesting observation, the second one on this particular example of cities reporting legislation as action, usually what we see is that this is the case of the application of a national legislation at the local level. So they are sort of re-reporting something that one could easily say that could have been reported at the national level as well, exactly because there is little room usually for them to develop their own. However, having said that, and because of the diverse nature that we see, this is not always the case. There are some cases where indeed you see a city taking a decision and developing something that is being applied at the city administrative level, and it works there.
Okay, thank you. And I will pick up one last question from the chat before we move on, and then I will ask you, Iraklis, to have a look at the Q&A module and try to answer in writing to those that we didn't have time. We have one question from Viljar here in the chat that it's a little bit of a provocative question. So, no one left behind. One of the core principles of the EU Green Deal is not upheld even within the EU. For example, the Fit for 55 and just transition related inadequacy. What does the JRC see could be done differently in relation to the implementation of SDGs to avoid European Commission mistakes on drafting legislation, analyzing impacts, meaningfully involving the public and communicating results?
Okay.
So now you have to speak on behalf of the European Commission.
Absolutely. But well, as I did before, I was speaking on behalf of the Commission before, and I will speak now. First of all, I cannot acknowledge all of this statement, but I can certainly pick up on some items that are more sort of relevant for the role of the JRC, which is to provide science for policy. So it's exactly through this work that we can better inform the Commission services that are drafting legislation, guidelines and directives to be uptaken by the Parliament and brought to the European people through the Council, that we do this kind of work. This is how we shape, this is how we influence by better decision making. So we provide this information, we provide this knowledge, we provide this data, and our main goal is to feed exactly this process for a better decision making. So when we know what is happening on the ground, this is the overarching idea here. When we know what is happening on the ground, because we have collected this information from the ground, we can better inform the Commission services that are going to be drafting the new Green Deal, if this is the case, or the new CAP, or whatever that is, particularly because of the very broad and wide range of the SDGs. We are able to, pick very different items that the Commission is working on based on the SDGs.
Thank you. I think also I noted down in your presentation that we can see that the poverty alleviation and emergency preparedness actions were quite low compared to, for instance, infrastructure development and other. And this can be a clear signal as well.
Absolutely.
That is there a gap? So
yeah, and
yeah,
this
we
is
need to.
what. Just a small thing
Yeah.
on what you just said, Stina. This is the case because we have predominantly covered European VLRs. When we go to, I'm guessing, African VLRs or South American VLRs, the situation might be very, very different. Be very different, and the tool can tell you how the types of measures and actions that are being implemented in different regions of the world can also highlight where the people see the gaps. Maybe in Europe a little bit less on SDG1, but more, for instance, on energy or climate change compared to other parts of the world. And this is some insights that we can also draw from this work.
Thank you so much, Iraklis.
Thank you very much, Stina.
If we were live, we would have had a round of applause here, but we are going to swiftly move on to our next speaker. So Ms. Gulnara Roll from the UN Environment Programme. And you have previously also worked with the UNECE as a secretary to the Committee of Urban Development, Housing and Land Management. So you have seen many cities working on tackling global agendas, including SDGs. Now I know you have a lot of focus also on climate commitments, and you are just back from the 6th UN Environment Assembly's Cities and Regions Forum in Nairobi, if I'm not mistaken, Gulnara. So we look forward to hearing your perspectives on, what with these kind of insights and what we know on what is happening. What are the type of multi-level forums, mechanisms, and actions that can help cities realize their contributions to global agendas?
Thank you so much, Stina, and thank you so much for the invitation to this meeting. It's an exciting discussion, and Iraklis, I think this was an amazing project, which would be really it would be interesting to keep being connected, because without this evidence and data about what is going on in terms of localization SDGs, we are not getting, we'll not be getting anywhere. We cannot measure the progress. And indeed, maybe I will pick up on your last discussion. In fact, at UNEP Cities unit, we are covering the whole globe, not only UNECE region, but basically all global regions of the world. And we do see the differences. And what we see really is that this kind of database and probably other evidence, we know that UN DESA, UN Habitat, UN Regional Commissions also are working on collecting different evidence on localization of SDGs. And there is also Local 2030 Coalition, which brings many of UN agencies together to look, to kind of analyze the progress with the localization of SDGs. That this data is very important. UNEP is doing a lot of analysis and assessments also in relation of how at local level climate and environmental related actions are being implemented. And we do see as well, the data also shows that there's a very big gap. For instance, there is still a lot of inertia if looking into kind of infrastructure discussion, right, rather than into maybe like if you speak about climate change, there are climate mitigation measures on infrastructure, or otherwise probably more cost-effective climate adaptation measures, like nature-based solutions. So this kind of data are really important for us to discuss this. So looking really forward into continuing discussion, Iraklis, with you and also with the cities. Yes, indeed, as Tina, you correctly mentioned, we just recently back from UN Environment Assembly, where we organized a summit of the cities and regions. It was done actually together with multiple UN agencies, first of all, UNECE and Habitat, all UN regional commissions, cities networks, other partners. And I just wanted to bring few snapshots, because it was quite a big meeting. We had like over 1,500 online attendees. So we got quite a lot of inputs in terms of the situation of the localization of SDGs, but indeed, as we at UNEP really looking more into climate and environmental related measures. And I think that my presentation will be really very much complementary to what Iraklis was presenting. because I would like to look into two topics. First of all, into the governance, and the second into the finance. So I think this is what Iraklis also mentioned in his presentation, that local governments can do quite a lot, and this database, different activities shows that cities and also regions, like metropolitan areas, for instance, they really, have lots of innovations. There are lots of different activities where they're also looking into kind of integrated solutions, which bring solutions, for instance, at the same time to addressing the climate change, loss of biodiversity, environmental degradation. So, I mean, if I think about our Cities and Regions Summit, for instance, there were cities of Cape Town, and many cities from different countries. They spoke about different activities. Freetown in Sierra Leone, for instance, like they named themselves Freetown as a tree town. So they're also trying to bring some of the kind of cost-effective tree planting activities, but also they're connecting right away to the actions to reduce the waste. So cities can do a lot. However, of course, what is important that we have a whole government approach and whole society approach, basic engagement of local authorities together with national governments, regional governments, and also engagement of the local communities. And we know that I think many of us were already in many different forums where we discussed this importance of multi-level governance. But what we did at the City Summit was to actually look what kind of formalized national and international institutional arrangements we have. Of course, under the Paris Agreement, I think Coalition for High Ambition Multi-Level Partnership is the one. And we have, so that coalition was launched at COP28, Climate Change Conference, and 63 countries joined it. Under Convention on Biological Diversity, which also will have its COPs this year. There is also a plan of action on subnational governments, cities, and other local authorities for biodiversity. So first, our point of, which we're bringing from the Cities and Regions Summit is that, we need to use existing institutional arrangements internationally, like CHAMP or the plan of actions under the Convention on Biological Diversity, to promote the role of the local governments. In many national governments as well, we know that in Nordic countries, that's very much the case where many national plans, or in the Netherlands, many national plans are being developed with strong engagement of local governments. And at the Cities and Regions Summit, I could also mention that the governments of Brazil, Colombia, France, Cambodia, United States, they also brought some examples how it's done at the national level. So if we go back to the data, it would be really interesting to maybe also have a database of this kind of national and international arrangements for formal engagement, because as soon as we have it in the law or in the convention, this is a kind of a long-term solution. And what we actually need is developing awareness of local governments, how to use those arrangements, and building capacity for engagement. So I think that's kind of very important. So I would like to put to the table of the discussion of the today webinar is exactly, how we can use the existing arrangements, and maybe do we have, or would we like also to have this kind of database of the multi-level formal institutional arrangements for localization with SDGs, for us at UNEP, especially on the environment and the climate change. And second topic I would like to bring is about financing. Of course, again, it was in many different forums, importance of the urban financing, and there are multiple numbers exist about. It's also, for instance, in the outcome document of the Cities and Regions Summit. So I'm happy to share later on link to to that report as well with all these numbers. Basically, many studies show that there is a huge gap in the needs in the demands for financing and in the available funds. So what we looked at the summit as well is, what are these moving parts in terms of providing the financing. So first of all, we looked into the international financial institutions, and there is the work by Jeffrey Sachs and Urban Commission for SDGs, which basically shows that still this reform of multilateral development banks is very much needed to make sure that they are able also to finance cities directly. We know that there are some of the examples already in different countries, but definitely this is one of the direction of the future work where the multilateral funding also will be available to the cities. The second topic that we addressed at the summit was engagement of the private sector. We had private sector quite honest presentations where they basically said that, they are very happy to step up and, to increase amount of the financing they're providing, but they need support from the governments. They also need support from international organizations. From the governments, first of all, it's about regulations. I think, going back to this question about legislation. So legislation, regulations is often a constraining factor for the private sector. And this is where we need to probably discuss and provide more analysis about what in different countries, in different cities can be changed. Still, of course, to have sufficiently stringent regulations to ensure that environmental sustainability is still in place. But at the same time, maybe there are some regulations which we can modify to make sure that we attract more private investment, especially into the kind of providing green investments. Secondly, the private sector organizations also mentioned that we at UN, or maybe at cities as well, we don't really know much about financial flows. They said that, these changes in the financial flows are really very dynamic. So, and this is where we need to work with private sector organizations to actually to provide more analytics about, how the private sector works and how we can attract better. And this is where also international organizations were asked to build more capacity of the local governments and also bring more of more awareness of the possibility of this private sector investments. So, and finally, about the international commitment, I would like also to say that there is also a process of multiple initiatives, international initiatives, which are opening the doors for the local governments. Just to bring you some of the examples from UNEP side, so there are some national commitments in so-named Global Cooling Pledge, which is looking into kind of nature-based solutions for cooling, and also into equipment for cooling. And this is where also the local governments can be engaged directly, not only the 68 governments who signed this global cooling pledge. The same last week, we had a very large building forum where we discussed the building breakthrough initiative, which originally was a national initiative. And so now we also opened kind of a subnational track for it. So I think that there is really kind of a growing role in this. So I think on this, probably I would like to stop my intervention and basically, Stina, back to you, but definitely would be interested to continue the discussion in addition to the data what Iraklis presented, but also on the, how we improve the multi-level governance at the international local level and the financing to the urban actors to bridge the gap between the existing needs and the available resources. So back to you, Stina.
Thank you so much for this global perspective, Gunnar. I think that was very useful. That you also made this comment on having a database and analysis for what is happening on the multi-level governance space and what kind of mechanisms and map and compare that on a global scale. I think we had a question previously also on policy coherence for sustainable development that is in the Q&A function. So maybe we can come back to this at the end when we come back to our round of discussions. There are a couple of questions coming for you there, Gulnara, in the Q&A. You can answer that in writing as well in the meantime. But I would like us to move on to our two city representatives. So we are going European, global, and now focusing on how are you, first, Krista Campos, Head of EU and International Relations Cities of Tallinn. How is Tallinn addressing the UN Sustainable Development Goals and also linking up both to the national level and the international level in this endeavor? And what are some of the remaining challenges, which I think will link to a question that we had too from Gerald in the last presentation on this need for reskilling, maybe also staff and population for this transition. So the screen is yours, Krista.
Yes. I'm sorry. Okay, I'm trying to open my slides. At first, I would really like to thank you both, Iraklis and Gulnara, for kind of providing this good overview on what is happening at the EU, but also global level. I think that when it comes to this database on VLRs, it is important because it is not only serving as a, let's say, source of information about the local VLRs and providing information on how many VLRs we have and how cities and municipalities are working with them, but also in terms of how, or also in terms of as a source of information and also inspiration for other cities. So actually we can learn from each other and we can see how what are different approaches when it comes to using the VLRs. So I'm trying to share my, can you see it now?
Yes, we can see it. Please.
So as time is very limited, I'm going to provide, I'm not going into details regarding the VL monitoring targets and indicators and reporting, but I'm going to provide more kind of comprehensive and generic overview on how City of Tallinn is working with sustainable development goals. And I'm also trying to highlight and introduce some of the concrete, let's say, measures and actions regarding SDGs implementation. When it comes to City of Tallinn, then we have Tallinn Strategy 2035, which is the most important development document of the City of Tallinn, and all other sectorial or thematical action plans and strategy documents should be aligned according to Tallinn 2035. When Tallinn drafted these strategic documents, then actually at the same time the national government elaborated national sustainability strategy called Estonia 2035. So in that sense, we can say that Tallinn 2035 strategy is aligned both when it comes to global sustainable development goals, but also when it comes to national sustainability priorities. And also, as at the EU level, at least the current European Commission have said that the European Green Deal is the main, let's say, cornerstone or pillar for EU sustainable development implementation. Then, of course, we are also following the EU Green Deal objectives. Actually, I have to say that, and that is my personal opinion, that I consider EU Green Deal as too narrow and maybe even too technical or too instrumental, as it is very much focusing only on maybe SDGs related to energy and climate. I'm not saying it is not necessary. Of course, it is. Climate urgency is there. We already know the impacts. But I think that it very much is lacking this kind of social aspects of sustainable development and also it is lacking of principle of leaving no one behind. Of course, now in Net Zero Cities missions, this memorandum of understandings and contracts with the citizens are of course at the local level kind of trying to fill that gap, but still I think European Green Deal is not covering all sustainable development goals, and that is why I think working with all UN SDGs is still very important, and especially when it comes to local level, we really have to address all the SDGs. As you can see, Tallinn 2035 strategies is very much a value-based strategy. We have 6 strategic directions or long-term goals which are related which are highlighting the values we would like to see in the city in the future, now and in the future. When it comes to how Tallinn is working with sustainable development goals, besides of integrating all SDGs in our Tallinn 2035 strategy, we have elaborated unofficial Tallinn Sustainable Development Guide. And basically that guide is stipulating the main and overarching principles on how Tallinn is implementing and monitoring the SDGs in the city of Tallinn. It is related to description of links between Tallinn 2035 goals and SDGs, but it is also very much related to setting the targets and indicators at the city level when it comes to monitoring the progress of sustainable development goals. I have to say that our monitoring and reporting system is comprehensive. We don't have separate monitoring system for monitoring only the progress of SDGs, but that is the system that basically enables to use the data and indicators for different reports, including voluntary local review. We have also been discussing on what is the role of the VLR in the internal reporting system in the city of Tallinn. I have to say that we haven't submitted any VLR yet. And the reason is very simple. We didn't want to elaborate VLR just for high-level policy forum and just for kind of marketing and showing how fancy we are in working with SDGs. We really wanted that voluntary local review is making sense also internally. And then there has been discussions on how we can use VLR also in our internal monitoring and reporting system. And then it has been decided that we would like to see the VLR as part of the ex post impact assessment reporting system. And it has been decided and discussed that we are going to use and elaborate VLR after every 4 years, which means that after every mandate of the city council. We will have local elections this autumn, which actually means that we are going to elaborate first VLR of the city of Tallinn in 2026. And that VLR then will actually assess how the policy decisions or decisions of the city council has been supported the implementation of the VLR. Now, when it comes to sustainability governance system in Tallinn, we really would we have decided that we have to take more kind of this holistic and integrated approach, and which means that we are working in both in policy development, which means that we have to define what needs to be achieved, and then using SDGs as guiding framework. The second pillar is multi-actor and multi-level governance, which means that we need to establish kind of ecosystem of new leadership and new governance methodologies. Someone is saying that, yes, I'm sorry, no, the local elections are in 2025, not this year. which means that we are going to elaborate the first VLR in 2026, not 2025. So thank you, my colleague who made that note. So when it comes to multi-actor and multi-level governance, then we really need to kind of create and increase the capacity for ecosystem leadership within the city organization, but also when it comes to citizens engagement, but also engagement of companies and other stakeholders. And I think very important aspect for achieving sustainable development goals at the local level is focusing on organizational development. As Iraklis mentioned, that before we can start talking about concrete actions related to sustainable development goals, we really need still to improve and increase the capacities and competencies and awareness of what SDGs are. Both when it comes to like internally in the city organization, but also externally related to the citizens and different stakeholders. I have highlighted here a couple of, let's say, concrete actions as well related to these three pillars. For example, in the field of policy development, what we are doing right now is that we are creating the system that links Tallinn 2035 annual action plan with the annual city budget and city financial strategy. We also would like to focus more on ex-ante evaluations because on that basis we are able to provide better, let's say, data and information for policy decisions. And currently we are also, besides of some other sectorial action plans, we are also elaborating a circular economy strategy for the city of Tallinn, and that is based on our collaboration with OECD that elaborated circular transition to circular economy action plan or roadmap for the city of Tallinn. When it comes to multi-actor and multi-level governance, then currently we are working on the development of citizens participation action plan. We also last year, as part of European Green Capital, we organized first the Citizens Assembly. And why this kind of tool or method is very important for us, it is because that before we actually came up with this new initiative of related to engagement, we actually had discussions with the mayor and vice mayors and city government, because for us it was very important that this is not just kind of artificial exercise, that we are inviting people to discuss about how we can connect the green areas and connect them better in the city. But for us, it was also important that those recommendations that are done by the Citizens Assembly, those recommendations and proposals will really be kind of considered and discussed, and kind of relevant or related policy decisions will be made. And it was also important to give the feedback to the Citizens Assembly and to the people what has happened with those recommendations. And that is exactly how we are working at the moment. Then when it comes to engagement of different private sector representatives, especially related to bringing more innovation and smart city solutions in the city. We last year, we also initiated a new program called Test in Tallinn. And in that program, we are actually inviting companies across the world to come to Tallinn and to test their prototypes and smart city solutions in a real city environment. Then Tallinn also is implementing participatory budgeting program, which provides direct access to the citizens to make recommendations related to investments and strategic activities in the city of Tallinn and projects. When it comes to urban planning, then this year we officially opened kind of the physical space, which called Open City Hub, and that is the space which is equipped with virtual reality and other IT tools. And that is the physical space where we are organizing different events, seminars, workshops related to urban and spatial planning projects.
Apologies, Krista, we need to also leave space for the last speaker. So if you can, thank you.
And of course, when it comes to organizational development, then training programs, we are also organizing annual strategy party in order really to keep Tallinn 2035 alive and also provide kind of broader opportunity for the city organization to discuss about different strategical questions. Stina asked me also to introduce a little bit how we are working internationally. We have established the Tallinn Sustainability Governance Competence Center, and I'm not going into the details, but we have like 3 building blocks. And the first one is related to internal further development of sustainability governance related model in the city of Tallinn. The second one is related to international peer learning and collaboration. And the third pillar is related to bilateral collaboration and providing expertise and support to other cities. At the moment, we have 4 contracts under preparation, 2 with Estonian municipalities and 1 in Ukraine and 1 in Georgia. Also, we are working with other cities across Europe, specifically related issues related to governance. And there are an ongoing project called Cities for Sustainability Governance, which involves 9 cities from 9 EU countries. A couple of challenges as well, maybe one that was also mentioned, which is related to national local gap. As far as I know, Estonia has submitted 2 national local reviews, but unfortunately, I have to say that cities and local level hasn't been involved in drafting of these 2 documents, and I still see that there is a need for better collaboration and dialogue with the national government. Then still we need to raise awareness and competencies what SDGs are in Estonia, I think, but it is also, I think, kind of EU-wise kind of challenge is that very often green transition is equal or seen as equal with sustainable development, which of course is not true. Sustainable development is much broader. The SDGs are much broader than only kind of green transition. And I think that we really have to focus on SDGs in more holistic way. And how to measure, Louise mentioned that we lack indicators related to governance, and I fully agree. We also, I mean, maybe one of the challenges is also at the city level that what could be the best targets and indicators to measure this whole of governance approach and also other governance related activities. But yeah, thank you from me.
Thank you so much, Krista. Sorry for stress you a bit at the end. I just want to make sure that we have time for our last city representative, Mr. Vakhtang Lumjaria, and hopefully also a few minutes for questions. Please put any questions to Krista in the Q&A or in the chat so she can answer it simultaneously. And I hand the floor for you, Mr. Lumjaria.
Hello, everyone. Just a moment for me to share my presentation also. First of all, thank you for the invitation for this presentation and side event. Greetings to all delegates, speakers, and members members of this event, and greetings to Ms. Gulnar role, and just a moment. Yes, now it's okay. And congrats on new appointment, and good luck on new position. So I would start my presentation with a short overview of the last several years, Tbilisi's progress on sustainable development and sustainability evaluation, which is very, very important for us. And as it was asked in a chat as a question, are SDGs only slogans or not? I think that it always has been more than slogans, even if it is not incorporated in budget, because it plays very high role for awareness programs, single champions who are pushing forward because of SDGs, their people and their population, their nature and their countries on this towards. But of course, if there would be create some kind of instrument tools where when local or central government can somehow make scenario and rolling of this or that project, how it will affect negatively or positively, and how much on sustainability, on which sustainability goals when they plan some kind of projects. But hopefully on the way of better data analysis, it will be possible in future, and it will be crucial instrument for better decision making. So we have presented our Tbilisi's smart sustainability profile on the last year, May, during our LED forum. And we are very, very thankful with UNECE and also Ms. Gulnar, while it was very important for us, where we had more than 120 KPIs, and on first stage we found 45 of them, and 46 or 7 of them, and lately approximately 80 of KPIs were found, but unfortunately some of them were impossible to observe because of not having enough physical infrastructure, for example, for observing noise pollution and so on and so forth, because we have not sensors yet, and we have no map of noise pollution and so on and so forth. Also, we are now elaborating first VLR in our region, which we started last year, where we created already task force group, and started to accumulating and observing on policy documents and data and KPIs and on way, and public May or June this year, but it will be postponed maybe 2-3 months because of HR issues and expert issues in our project. But we are doing a very, very good job with Habitat, who are leading now our project, and we will do quite good job with them. Next, I would like to discuss several projects of sustainability, sustainability and development projects for Tbilisi. And in our budget, it always have been the huge and #1 reform, transport reform for Tbilisi. And it is approximately 80 million Georgian lari budget annually during last 7 years. It is first time that this year our bus fleet exceeded 1,000 buses, and we need even more, and we plan to continue our popularization plan and just improvement plan of public transport. And also central government is helping us and co-financing renovation project of Tbilisi subway system. And we are also building quite a big network of bicycle network, and it will be approximately 240 kilometers for Tbilisi in several several years after this. But we have already created approximately 20% of this, and also we are working on smart super blocks for Tbilisi, like it was implemented in Barcelona, and super block projects in all Tbilisi districts. And while it will be successful, and I am 100% sure that it will be successful, we will implement 20 more projects in all over the Tbilisi for the second phase. Also, I want to underline very successful greenery and recreation reforms for Tbilisi, where we are not only renovating old green areas, which are more than 100 hectares of Tbilisi area, 15 parks and 60 green islands. But we are also creating absolutely new areas which we are not using before as a green areas, as absolutely not using for any direction.
We are losing you a little
dirty
bit.
places and swamps and so forth. Now there are absolutely new green areas, parks and recreations, where SME sectors are also creating around them their businesses, and employment is also increasing, and it's fantastic, and very, very good results we are observing. And of course, air pollution is reduced by several indicators, by 25% for some directions and 2.5% for some directions, and we are also happy for this. And I would like to also mention accessibility issues. How many minutes do we have, Sina? We are already run out, as I mentioned.
1 minute.
1 minute. Okay, I will try to summarize it. Also, we are very happy to have planned and already almost finished one of our multifunctional centers of Tbilisi. We will have one of them already in May finished, and we will have second of them till the end of this year, which are increasing accessibility and availability for sport and art circles for young generation of Tbilisi, which are on 12 or 11,000 square meters on first and second project, on absolutely new area, and there will be co-financed and subsidized by local government, maybe basketball, football, swimming pools, and so other directions for youngsters living in so not central areas of Tbilisi, and this also will increase availability of sport services, and not only sport services. Also, I would like to finish my presentation with mentioning our LED forum, which will quite soon renamed by Tallinn Sustainability Forum, and it's already number 14th forum for Tbilisi. Last year we had more than 100 speakers and more than 20 panels, and also this year it will be 22 panels and 130 panelists and speakers, and more than 500 delegates and observers, encompassing approximately 13 Georgian cities. We are moving towards making this forum regional, together with Armenia, Azerbaijan, and probably with Turkey also. And we hope that this forum also will play a very, very good role for awareness rising on sustainability issues, on SDG issues, and also just making deals and joint projects together with international partners and local partners.
Thank you so much. Time is against us today. Very engaging conversation. I think we lost Vakhtang now even from the meeting. So we are on time for the session and ending at 1:45. So I want to thank all the speakers here today and the audience for all the engagement in the Q&A. I think we got a lot of really interesting questions, really interesting responses. So we will make sure to follow up on this and capture the responses that we have in the Q&A in a written report from the session. Maybe I can just make a final round to all the panelists and speakers here today that if you could leave here today with one wish fulfilled that would help you to accelerate SDGs in your work, in your context, what would it be after hearing the different inputs here today? Who would like to start?
I will try if it's possible. My battery were low and I disconnected. Excuse me for this. For Georgian and Tbilisi perspective, it's much more related on fiscal issues and fiscal policies.
20 seconds.
While we don't have a progressive income tax and we have flat income tax, it will play a huge role to shift on progressive income tax, and also reform of property tax would also generate huge resources for making SDG more easy and accessible. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vakhtang, for being with us. Krista, what would be your wish?
Yeah, I actually, what I wish is that I really would like that SDGs will be put back in the EU agenda as priority, because EU agendas and EU policies and priorities are very much also impacting on what we are doing at the local level. If it's not priority for the EU, then it is possible, but it is just harder to keep that also as priority for the city.
Thank you. So, EU response to that, and then we go to the global.
No response to that, but I will say what I wish, what I take out of this is that although I echo the message of Krista, and I also tend to agree, but from our side, I would say that if you picture the SDGs as a grand mosaic of individual tiles, and each tile is like a local action or a strategy implemented somewhere in Europe in particular, which might seem, totally individual or useless or without any consequence really. But if you put them together in the grand picture, it makes sense. So I'm living here with a wish to identify these missing tiles, make sure that we don't leave any tile behind out of this whole SDG picture, and I guess also make sure that we connect the tiles to one another. So this is what I'm living with, a bit more in an artistic way, if I may.
Thank you. So good. Now you have the final wish.
Right. Well, the final wish would be to bridge the urban finance gap, and this really requires cooperation between the local governments, national governments, international financial institutions, international organizations. We see that from many UNEP reports that emissions are growing. The situation with the climate change is not improving. It's not. The data are showing. So we have increasing emerging issues, and the need into any climate mitigation adaptation measures is growing. So we need to resolve the finance gap for the city so that they're able to tackle, the existing problems, but also the future ones.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so we closed the circle there on the finance and the need for additional resources and also fiscal space on the local level, I think. So thank you so much. Again, thank you to everyone who has participated. We will follow up, like I mentioned, at the registration form. We asked if you wanted to be on our newsletter distribution list. If you did click yes, you will be able to receive the summary and the report from this event and other future invitations. We are already thinking of continuing the conversation in the future in this group. So really good to be together today for this time to discuss these important issues. So then I will close this webinar and stop the recording and wish everyone a great rest of the day.
And thank you, Stina, for the excellent moderation of the of discussions.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Stina.
Thank you. Take care.
Goodbye, everybody.